queridas latinas, y gracias Alejandra por organizar esta. Yo soy Robert Kennedy y les agradezco sinceramente su apoyo. I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm in Iowa, crossing Iowa in an automobile right now, and I'm sorry that I can't be with you today. I want to talk a little bit about my family's long commitment to Latin America, which I've continued. My old President Kennedy wanted to end the hostile and domineering relationship that the United States traditionally had with Latin America. And he started USAID and the Alliance for Progress specifically to give aid directly to the poor and to build the middle class in those countries. My uncle made 2 trips, which were his favorite trips during his presidency. One was to Iowa, but the other one was to Colombia. And he met with Yeres Camargo, who was the Colombian at that time, who my Aunt Jackie Kennedy said was the most intelligent and the most brilliant of all the leaders that they had met while they were in the White House. And they had met some of the most important in the world, including Eamon de Valera, who was the George Washington of Ireland, and Charles de Gaulle, but they were most impressed of all of them by Yeres Camargo. And a crowd of almost 2 million people were met for my uncle in the main plaza in Bogota. And Yeres Camargo turned to my uncle, to John Kennedy, and he said, "Do you know why they love you?" And my uncle said no. And Yeres Camargo told him, "Because you've put America on the side of the poor." And my uncle was very, very proud of that. My father, after my uncle was killed, after John Kennedy's death, my father, one of his first trips was to Latin America, and that's where he broke with Lyndon Johnson, because he believed that Johnson was changing back to the old model of aiding the military juntas in order to grease the condition of U.S. multinationals all over Latin America, rather than actually taking an interest in those countries. My father's greatest political ally was Cesar Chavez, and one of his closest friends. And I, for the past 2 decades, the last 2 decades of Cesar Chavez's life, I worked very, very closely with him on pesticide issues. And I was very, very grateful that his family asked me to be a pallbearer in his funeral when he died in 1993. I worked on Hispanic issues, and particularly environmental justice issues all over this country, on pesticide issues, which disable 56,000 Latino children and Hispanic children every year. I also was the attorney fighting the Navy to stop the bombing of the island of Vieques in Puerto Rico, the poorest population in America, and one of the sickest populations in the Caribbean, because of all the toxics that were being released through the detonation of naval ordnance. And I successfully stopped that bombing after 50 years, and I'm very proud of that. One of the obstacles I had when I was fighting that case is that the judge who we were arguing the case in front of put me in prison in Guaynabo, the maximum security prison in Puerto Rico, for the entire summer of 2001. And I was there with one of my closest friends, Edward James Olmos, the Chicano actor who is also the godfather to my son. The name of my son, Aiden Vieques Kennedy. He's my youngest son. And I named him, his middle name is Vieques, because the first time that I saw him was when my wife brought him to me when I was in prison in Puerto Rico. I believe, as all of you do, that immigration made this country. My family was a family of immigrants, and that our country has benefited enormously from the vitality of the Hispanic and Latina diaspora. We've benefited culturally, we've benefited economically, and in sports and many other areas. But unfortunately, because of the diminished condition of the middle class in this country, Hispanic and Latino Americans are often have the most precarious positions and are suffering from the great disparities of wealth that we're now seeing in our country, from the destruction of the middle class, from the crisis of debt. And my presidency are going to focus on those issues, and particularly as it will always be one of my priorities to make sure that the people of Hispanic and Latinos in this country are able to get child care, that their businesses, small businesses, protected, that the middle class is protected in this country in every way, and that and that we have minimum wage laws that allow people to live, to put away money, to give them some hope of having health care and maybe getting a home someday. So all of those are issues that I'm going to focus on. I want to talk about one other issue finally, which is the border issue. You know, I went to the border. I originally opposed the wall at the border that Donald Trump was proposing, but when I took my recent trip to the border, a lot of the issues I learned a lot about what's actually happening down there, and it is a disaster.